Greetings and salutations, this is Imperator Vespasian and his trusty sidekick.
Hello.
Today we're having a look at some of our Greek stuff. We haven't done any Greek stuff for a while, so we thought we'd get back into showing you all the different Greek units that we've got. And there is a campaign on its way. A World War Z campaign set in ancient Greece, which is going to be fun. And after that we've got an actual real Greek campaign with no monsters. So today we're going to be doing Queen Artemisia. Who's Queen Artemisia?
A woman that works for the Persians.
Yeah,
and
well done.
commands a fleet.
Yeah, pretty much. You got all that from the film, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also know about her past life, so that's good.
Yeah. Queen Artemisia is featured in the film 300. And she's a complete psychopath in the film 300. Although I quite like her, because she's quite cool. She runs around and fights and stuff.
And beheads messengers.
Yeah, she does that too. Actually, if you look at the film, most of the characters are actually in character. That's pretty much what she was like. So this is Queen Artemisia. The figure is a standard Greek hoplite with a slight bit of modification. It's got a nice cloak and everything. And she's got a dead Athenian at her feet, which is usually what you will find when Queen Artemisia is around. She despised Athenians, didn't she?
Mm-hmm.
She's in the black leather armour of Caria and the white linen of Caria. So the black and white looks quite cool. Although she hasn't got a shield. This figure hasn't got a shield. What do you think?
Looks pretty good.
Yeah, she's toting a hoplite spear and she's got a sword on her belt. I just think the character looks quite good. And yeah, the female head comes from the Project Z female box set. She's one of the female characters you get, or female heads that you get in that box. Very useful if you want to make figures into females. So she was queen of Halakon and Nasus and Kos, which is a small island that no one really cares about these days. Commander of the satrap of Persia. Her father had been the satrap of Caria before her, so she kind of inherited the throne. Yeah, that's about that. So what do you want to know about her history?
Well, I thought her family was murderers.
Her family did come to grief. Caria was part of the Persian Empire. And I'll go into the details of Caria later. We're going to do a video on the actual Carian hoplites, and I'll go into the actual history of Caria and that. But Caria was a small, well, a medium-sized nation at the bottom end of Anatolia. So it's the bottom bit of Turkey, the sort of pointy bit of Turkey. And they were allied to the Persians. When the Persians came into the Ionia, which is the Greek part of Turkey, they overran it and they allied with some states and they invaded other states. Generally, they were quite well received. They came in and a lot of the Greek city-states sort of just allied themselves with Persia because they had a bigger army and they offered to protect them against other Greek city-states. And so that's where Caria came into the game. It turns up slightly before the Greco-Persian War as an ally of the Persians. So when the initial Ionian revolt popped up, at first they kind of backed the rebels because it looked like the rebels were going to win, and then they decided they were going to fight on the side of the Persians, and they backed the Persians after that. And they helped defeat the Greek armies in Ionia, and they pushed them out, and eventually found themselves as part of the Persian army that invaded Greece, leading to the Battle of Thermopylae, and later on the battle. Oh, what's the next battle? The one after Thermopylae.
Marathon?
No, Marathon was the first battle. Sorry, Marathon happened, and then 20 years later, Thermopylae happened.
Then the Black Gates.
Yeah, the Black Gates, yeah, that's it, that's right. And after the Black Gates was the Battle of Salamis, and that was pretty much the beginning of the end of the Persian War.
What do they call the Black Gates?
The Black Gates, the Hot Gates.
That's it, the Hot
That's
Gates.
the Hot Gates.
I'm thinking of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I was thinking of Lord of the Rings, yeah. But that's the Greco-Persian War, who cares? Anyway, Caria backed the other side. They backed the Persians. Now, Artemisia, if you watch film 300, is pretty well depicted. She did meet Themistocles. It was actually Themistocles who asked her for a meeting, not the other way around. In the film, it's her. She asked Themistocles for the meeting, but it was actually him who put the meeting forward because he actually knew Artemisia. He had lived in Caria for a short amount of time during his life, and they actually knew each other. So it was sort of two sort of friends, meeting to try and sort out if they could sort of end this war. We don't really know what went on. You can believe the film's version if you want, or you can believe what certain authors wrote. We don't know. I should guess they actually met just to try and sort out some sort of deal.
Pretty sure the film just wanted to get more views.
Yeah, the film was looking for naughty time, but in reality, it's quite possible that Themistocles himself was simply trying to buy time, and so he was trying to bluff the Persians through Artemisia, and Artemisia herself, she is probably trying to get the Greek navy to change sides and join the Persians, but she's also probably trying to buy time for herself, because if everything went the wrong way, Caria would be in the firing line of the Greeks. So remember, she has a empire. She has her own little mini empire to deal with that's under Persian control, and there's all sorts of stuff going on. A lot of politics going on. Artemisia brought with her for the Persian fleet some of the best ships the Persians had. You see in films these huge amounts of triremes floating around. In reality, most triremes were actually Greek. The Athenians spent a huge amount of money building I think 30 very, very heavily armed, purpose-built warships, which were very powerful ships. Artemisia, her people are basically pirates. When they're not just living their normal lives, that they've been Vikings, and they're going out and raiding ships and attacking places. So the Carians too had a pretty powerful fleet, and during the battles between the Persians and the Greeks, it was actually Artemisians' Carian ships that bore the brunt of the battle. They were the elite ships of the fleet. They were the only other ones with proper triremes built out for war. Most Greek ships and most Persian ships were for trade. They were just normal biremes, and they were just there for trade. They would normally just carry food and supplies and whatever it was they were trying to sell, gold, frankincense, myrrh, whatever, and they were put into use for military use, whereas the Athenians and the Carians were the only ones with purpose-built warships. That's a bit of interesting. During the Battle of Salamis, Artemisia tried to persuade Xerxes not to fight the battle. She did not think it was very wise to fight the battle, and they didn't listen to her. The other generals in the Persian army said, no, we should fight the battle. Our navy is absolutely enormous. There's no way the Athenians stand a chance against us, or the Greek state stand a chance, because they were totally outnumbered. And Artemisia said, no, you should not fight them at sea, because you will lose. And as it turned out, she was right. During the battle, she led her fleet at the front of the Persian fleet. And one of the Greeks, Aristides and Themistocles, had put a price on her head. So any Greek ship that could nail Artemisia would get a bounty, would get a huge amount of cash. No questions asked, tax-free. And so when her ship at the head of the Persian fleet turned up. The captains immediately went for her ship, tried to sink her ship. So she manoeuvred her ship away, and in order to get away, she had to ram through a Persian ship. And the Persian ship sank. It was the first Persian casualty of the battle. And the King Xerxes was sat on a hill watching the battle from afar, and he couldn't quite tell what ship was what, and he thought he'd seen Artemisia sink a Greek ship. And he said, "Oh, my men have become women, and my women have become men, because Queen Artemisia was the best captain, because she'd sunk a Greek ship." In actual fact, it was one of her own an allied ship, a Persian ship, so it doesn't count. And during the battle, she fled.
No, she died.
Yeah, during the battle, she fled, or she sailed away.
No.
And the Greeks tried to hunt her down. They chased her down, and she managed to escape. It's quite an interesting little story, but I'm not going into that one.
Pretty sure she got beheaded.
No, she didn't get beheaded. She made it back to Caria. And by then, the Persian Empire had begun to fall apart. Or not the Persian Empire. The alliance between the city-states in Ionia, which would lead to multiple wars in the future. And she got back to Caria, and she lived the rest of her life in Caria, and she eventually threw herself off a cliff because she was insane.
Fair enough.
Yeah, she was completely barking as well. When she used to see a man that she liked, she would ask him for a date, and if he said, "No, I'm not really interested, thank you," she'd gouge his eyes out. That's the sort of queen she was.
Makes sense.
Yeah, she was awesome.
If you're not going to have me, then you're not have to have anyone else. So your eye privilege is done.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. She was that sort of girl. Earlier on in her career, she found herself in charge of a handful of soldiers back when Caria was a bit of a hellhole, and there was the capital of Caria was causing quite a bit of trouble. That they were sort of oppressing people and stuff. And this is after her father died, and she led a troupe of dancers to dance outside the city walls of the capital of Caria. And so the soldiers came out of the city walls to watch what was going on. They thought it was some sort of religious festival, because priestesses dance and stuff. And while they were dancing, her soldiers, who were disguised as trees, sneaked in and took over the gates of the fortress, and she took the city without a fight. So that's the kind of person you're dealing with. That was during the Carian Civil War. So she was a very, very clever tactician, and quite full of guile, I believe would be the right term. So, any questions?
First,
Yeah.
her character sheet.
Her character sheet. She's quite good in combat. Got 4 attacks. Kills on a 2+, that's awesome. And relatively decent armour. Just standard Greek armour, nothing special. She carries a Zephos, which is designed for stabbing. It's very much like the Roman Gladius. It's a stabbing blade rather than a hacking blade that the Athenians carried. The Carians generally carried the Zaphos. They preferred the Spartan style of fighting. You put your shield in front of you and you stab round it, and you stab at your enemy's face and his hands, and it's quite vicious. She's a strategist, and she's inspired, and of course she's a hero. So that's the character. Quite good. Not a bad character really to play.
So her parents did get murdered, didn't they?
I think her father was poisoned. I'm not sure what happened to her mother.
Is the movie correct?
Not
she grew up in a
quite.
slave ship.
No, she didn't grow up in a slave ship. There was a rebellion. Part of the Ionian War. The Caria began to break up. Caria was a conquered state. It's made up of 3 separate parts, and the indigenous population are not Carians. Not a Carian would believe that. But there was a revolt of the indigenous population who were southern Anatolians, and they didn't really get along with their Carian overlords. The Carians were Greeks, although the Carians would refuse to admit that they were Greeks to the Greeks. The Greeks told the Carians, "You're Greeks, you should be fighting with us," and they were sort of, "No, we're not. We're Persians. We're not Greek." And they refused to admit that they were Greeks, but they were Greek. And because of the rebellion going on, there were several rebellions of the indigenous population who'd been conquered by the Carian Greeks. There was sort of civil unrest and stuff going on, and eventually it broke out into civil war. And this is long before all the stuff you see in the films. But Artemisia basically ended up not being part of the throne because she wasn't. There was no male heir. She was the heir to her father, who'd been the Persian satrap, not the Persian. The Persians had taken them in basically, whereas the Greeks were sort of rebelling, or the pro-Greek Carians were rebelling for the Greeks, sort of identifying as Greeks, whereas the other Carians were identifying as either themselves or Persians. It was really complicated. So she did have a bad time of it for the early part of her childhood, but she was supplied and helped by the Persians because, of course, she was the daughter of the Persian satrap, and she ended up on the throne. She won the civil war without much fighting. I've just said how she captured the capital. She captured capital without a fight. That's the sort of tactician she was. She was very good. And she won without spending a huge amount of lives. So you could kind of think that that's actually quite nice. But I don't think she was really doing it to save lives. It was just the easiest way of fighting was to persuade people to join your side.
I don't think she likes the idea of sitting there for a year, sieging the capital.
Yes, that too. Yeah.
I don't think she cares about how many men she loses. She just cares about how long a battle will take.
And it's much easier to take a city from inside than outside. And it's much easier to get them to open their gates by putting on a show for them, rather than actually sending troops over the wall.
World War One. Russia came out of the war not because they were losing, but because their economy was destroyed.
Yes.
So the Germans didn't really have to do much there.
Well, they did. They wasted the Russian economy by fighting.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So anyway,
to say kind of tactics.
Her son became king after her. She married a dude. Actually, she married several dudes who she also murdered. But she did have a son who took over after her, and he was the guy in charge when what do you call him? Not Herodotus. Was it Herodotus?
I do not know.
When he fled Greece, the writer, when he fled Greece and he went to Caria, and it was her son that saved him. That's a whole other story as well. I can't remember the guy's name now. Was it? It wasn't Herodotus, was it? No, who cares? A Greek guy. Anyway, questions? Sorry, we've already done the questions, haven't we?
Well, I don't have any more.
Right, definitely, there we go. So anyway, there's a figure, and we've done a little bit of talking about her. I could have just printed out a sheet of history about her, but I couldn't be bothered.
No, we could have done that, and then just scrolled it down the camera.
Yeah, we could have done. Yeah. But look her up. She's a very interesting figure, and a lot of interesting stuff happened during her reign. You can buy coins on eBay with her face on, believe it or not. I know, I googled it and I found some coins and it was from eBay, so I thought that was cool.
Don't trust that.
They probably are. I mean, Carian coins were published. Or were minted, should I say.
You'll probably buy it for like £100 and it turns out to be a chocolate coin.
Yeah, that could happen. That could happen. Oh, there could be some guy just minting them himself in his back garden.
Yeah.
Just getting a bit of tin and hammering it out and saying, yeah, that's right.
And paint it.
Yeah, how would you know? Right, anyway, that's the end of the video. You're singing?
So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and comment down below what you think of Artemisia.
Queen Artemisia.
Queen Artemisia.
Of Caria.
Of Caria. That's everything from me.
And everything from him. Goodbye. Thank
ya.
you. And good luck.